Hello, welcome to episode 9. We're going to change the format up for this one. Today we're actually going to do an interview with the one and only Jesse Gorzinski from IBM. And he's going to help us talk about open source on IBM I. So hello, Jesse.
Hello, Ryan. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is not going to be your normal, typical presentation. We don't have a canned presentation to deliver. There won't be one afterwards. I will post the recording on the web. We have gotten together a few times to talk about a couple high-level bullet points, but from an audience standpoint, you're going to have to kind of bear with us. We're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to give you some information that's new for IBM I. Traditional IBM I people. Might be a little scary, so you're here to help us overcome that fear.
All right.
Awesome. So we're going to do a lot of demo, but first I wondered if you could just give us a little overview of the direction and future of open source for IBM I.
Absolutely. So I'll start out just giving a little bit of background on why did IBM I and IBM I development particularly focus on open source? And there's, a 90-minute response to that, and I'll try to keep it a little shorter. But when we started looking at market research of IBM I folks, things like the Health Systems Marketplace Survey, we started seeing what the major needs for our customers were. Primarily, customers interested in various types of modernization efforts, customers interested in making sure that they can continue to hire the proper skills for the platform to do application development, whether they're looking at reduction of IT spending, dealing with data growth that's just uncontrollable, even security topics. We realized there was a lot of overlap between what our customers needed and what open source technologies can bring to the platform, right? And then we've also been noticing other trends as well, just of course, the continued growth of open source in the industry as a whole, IBM, corporate IBM, if you will, embracing open source through a number of its initiatives, including cloud and other emerging technologies that they're doing kind of across the IBM offering set. Open source definitely seemed like the right way to go. It's a great fit for me personally because I've always been passionate about open source. When I was first working with the platform, I think now 17 years ago, I was working on the platform for about 2 weeks before I was loading open source onto the platform. So this is something I've always been passionate about. But it does make a lot of sense for IBM I businesses, right? And that's kind of the why, and that's important to understand because that's how we got to where we're at today. And moving forward, we're going to continue to focus really on just, business value. So what real business applications can we enable with open source technologies? And that means either full solutions that will be running on IBM I in the future thanks to open source innovation, think ERP, CRM, social stuff, e-commerce stuff, millions of other things, or just broader technologies that have an established business need. For instance, some of the audience may know that we have machine learning technologies and things available for the platform. And there's been real business need driving that technology as well. So in short, moving forward, expect to see our open source deliveries just aligned with the needs of our IBM I businesses as much as feasible.
Awesome. Thanks. So when you mention open source, the first thing that comes to my mind is Linux. Is IBM I turning into a Linux distribution?
That's a great question and a very common question as well. The short answer is no, right? We are getting alignment with some of the technologies, which is a good thing. One of the terms that we've been using for conferences and things when we present is normalization, right? It's the normalization of IBM I, meaning one of the benefits of open source is giving the platform a level of familiarity with people who are coming from Linux or Unix distributions, and they can come to IBM I platform. They can actually use tools they're familiar with. They can use languages and frameworks that they're familiar with, and that has incredible value. In fact, I've talked to numerous customers, including, of course, developers that work for me here at IBM that never see a 5250 green screen. Right? And that's, that's just indicative of one of the things we get with this alignment with Linux, right? And of course now, Yum, the package manager, which we'll be talking later on today, that's originated in Red Hat Linux, and a lot of these technologies have originated in Linux. But really, what IBM I is turning into is the same thing it's always been, which is a very data-centric, business-centric system capable of meeting the needs of our customers and doing so very well. And what we're seeing today is that there is a very unique value in the synergy between the stuff that IBM I does very well and the rapid innovation that open source is bringing, right? So key message that I like to tell people over and over is that open source on the platform is really there to add value to the RPG and DB2 investment or other, whatever ILE languages you've invested in, whatever products you've invested in, the solutions that are running on your system. Open source is really here to add value to that investment that you already have, because it's allowing that investment to be so easily brought forth into the modern world and interfacing with, other modern interfaces, or bringing, kids out of college, or recruiting IT skills some other way, or you name it. It's just bringing a lot of benefits to it and just adding value to the core business and the core platform that's been there for, of course, now 30 years.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing I'd like to mention here, just for the audience, is this is going to be more of the demonstrations that are coming up are more around the administration challenges or information you would want to know, not so much programming. There's going to be a ton of resources out there for programmers and developers. This is not that. So
exactly.
Why don't we get started and show people how to actually get the open source environment set up and running. So you got two LPARs on this system here. We've got Eagle and Shark. If you've watched some of my other videos, you're probably familiar that I like animals, and most of my systems and stuff have wildlife in it. So the first system already has the environment up and running, so we're going to focus on Shark right now. Let's just show you a few things. You know what? Why don't we jump over to Access Client Solutions and just go through the install piece. There is a URL I'll share in the meeting notes about how to get started with the install and stuff. I've got it right here somewhere. There's a getting started section here, but you can read through that on your own time. We're just going to jump in and start actual demoing. For Access Client Solutions here, it's kind of buried underneath tools. There's this open source package management. There is a one-time setup piece for this, and it's mentioned in the getting started guide, and hopefully we'll run into that. But I've laid a few other things down here that we're going to hit first that I expect a normal customer might run into at their shop if they've not set this up before. So let's go ahead and click on this. And connect to the system. It doesn't have to be QSEC offer. I'm using that for my demos here. And I have a test user profile set up later, so you can restrict authority, and we'll get a view of how that would look. All right. Oh, look at this. So cannot connect, connection refused. If you're a traditional shop, I expect you're going to run into this. What this is telling you is the SSH server is not running. Don't spend a lot of time debugging this. It's simple to check. Netstat star CNN. Port 22 is where your SSH server would be running. You notice it's not there, so we're just going to start it quick. If you hit F5 to refresh, you'll see it. Okay, good to go. Again, don't spend a lot of time on that. That's the first thing to check if you get a connection refused. Give it a second, and let's try it now. Okay, open source environment not installed. Would I like to install it? Well, yes, please, I would. So what this is doing in the background, just jump over to the other box here so you can get a feel for the environment that gets laid down. It's all going to go in queue OpenSys. I've had too much coffee this morning. You got to slow me down here. In the exe directory, it's going to put this yum directory in there. You know, on Shark that didn't exist a minute ago. Probably does by now already. And anyway, it's going to populate that directory with some stuff, and we'll look at that a little bit more here. All right. Prior to doing this, the very first time you make this connection, I believe it's to any LPAR, you actually have to, where is it here? You have to set up this bootstrap environment thing. Yeah, right here. I'm going to let you guys read through that. It's pretty simple. You, yeah, cut and paste some code basically into the run SQL thing and just kick it off. It walks you through it right here. You don't download this file, you just download the text, copy and paste that into run SQL, and you're good to go. And that is only once per, PC, I'm guessing, that you download and set up Access Client Solutions on?
Once per LPAR.
Okay.
Once per PC for ACS, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good. And then it opens up this cool window and tells you when it's done. It doesn't close the window for you, though. You got to X out of that yourself. So here's kind of the GUI interface to this, and some of what we're going to look at will be command line based. So let's jump on the system again here and take a look at that directory, and let's talk about a few components of it. Just because we've installed that does not mean we're set up to use it on the green screen. There's some environment variable path setup that might need to be done. You might be concerned about authority as to who can go out and update all these things and install them, and not only that, but what are they? Most IBMI people probably aren't going to recognize a lot of these things. But Google is your friend on that. And the one we're going to focus on today is called Yum. Do you want to give us a quick update as to what Yum is and why IBM chose Yum instead of some of my other favorite tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yum is, we open source people call it a package manager. If you're not familiar with a lot of open source technology, that term might not mean a lot, but Yum is actually the tool that will do installs, removals, any level of management of what open source you have installed. So what Ryan has up right now is this interface, and you can see that interface can show you what's installed, what updates are available, what packages are available to you. All of that information provided to this UI, as an example, is provided by this utility we call Yum, right? If you choose something from that available packages list, and so actually, Ryan, I'm going to recommend let's go install Nginx. If we go down in that list, look for the ends. As Ryan goes to install Nginx, it's going to demo one of the really great things about what a package manager does. Because you can see we have, a couple hundred packages available. We have 173 here that are ready to be installed. We already have a few that are already installed as part of that initial load that Ryan just showed you. If he clicks on Nginx and clicks on install, it's going to show you something that's actually more important than you realize, because it's going to say, I'm installing Nginx, and then it'll say underneath it, it'll say installing for dependencies. And so what that means is it tracks down every other piece of open source that this guy needs to run, and it figures out what that list is. And if those dependencies have dependencies, it would build that up as well, right? So it's going to stop and ask, is this okay? And if Ryan put a yes in here, a Y for yes, this is okay, it would actually go download and install Nginx for you as well, right? So this will just take, as you can see, not a lot of time, right? And so if you're familiar with Nginx, Nginx is really powerful HTTP server technology, really great at load balancing and reverse proxying and all kinds of stuff. But you can see in just a matter of seconds, we were able to load new software on, track down all the dependencies, and a lot of the management tasks that we're going to talk about can be done in just seconds.
Yeah,
fantastic.
That was absolutely 3 seconds. And to be honest, I'm at home using my home internet, and I don't have a lot of good things to say about that. So it would, it's not going to take you any more time wherever you're at.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and a common question is that we get from people who are familiar with Linux, at least, or is why didn't you choose another package manager, right? Common one is apt, right? Well, why didn't you choose apt? Apt is very popular, very familiar. It's used in a lot of kind of Debian derivatives of Linux distributions. You know, and when we were bringing this technology onto the platform, we did evaluate several technologies. We looked at cost, we looked at technical feasibility, all kinds of boring stuff. But really, RPM and Yum, RPM we didn't really talk about, but RPMs are the formats for the actual individual packages themselves. So for instance, there's an RPM package for Nginx, RPM package for the thing that Nginx needed, which is SSL libraries. The packages are installed with this thing called RPM Package Manager. It was formerly known as Red Hat Package Manager. So a lot of these things have Red Hat at their roots, right? Yum is actually a derivative of something from Yellow Dog Linux, which was an even earlier technology, but a lot of this has Red Hat roots. And Red Hat has always been a history of making sure that the way they package and distribute and allow management of their installed software is really suitable for enterprises, right? And some of you may know that Red Hat is, you know, very experienced at doing enterprise Linux and enterprise open source in general. And of course, now IBM acquired Red Hat, so we have that synergy here as well. But for a lot of those types of reasons, Yum just made the most sense. And so that's the one that we went with. We went with this RPM ecosystem and Yum because, again, it just makes this stuff really easy, and it has roots that make us confident that it's well suited for enterprises.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to show people, if you're not familiar with a Linux distribution, what some of those other package managers look like. I've used apt primarily with Ubuntu for years, but I've been playing with OpenSUSE as of lately. I'll just give a quick
Zipper.
What look like. Yeah, I use Yast on this one. I'm not familiar with all the different ones, but it's a nice GUI interface, just like what we saw in IBMI. You go click in here, and same type of thing. You can browse for package names or categories. They even let you, you know, search. So anyway, that's kind of what that is. You see this RPM thing even over here. That's what we're more, you know, this is games and all sorts of crap here. So we'll jump back into our world, but that's kind of what it looks like on a Linux distribution. Pretty similar, actually, just a little more efficient, more business-like over here. I like it. It's nice and clean. One thing you'll notice on this list here, the repository says at IBM. Let's talk a little bit about repositories and how to add one, but primarily first, what is a repository and why would I care?
Sure. So a repository is the thing that provides all of the information that Yum processes and displays, right? So, for instance, the screen that you're currently on, installed packages, you know, that comes from a local database, but the other screens that are available, you know, what updates are available, what packages are ready for me to install, all of that information comes from this thing called the repository, right? And then if you say, go install a package like we did a few minutes ago, the binaries of the package itself also comes from that repository. So a repository is really just a place where a set of open source packages live, right, in the simplest sense. And it also just has that metadata to know what versions are here, you know, how much stuff is here, things like that. And the main repository that you see people working with today on IBMI is just a repository we so aptly called IBM, right? Because it's the IBM repository. Now, everything in this IBM repository, to address some common concerns and questions, everything in this IBM repository is built by IBM, right? It has some level of verification from IBM development teams. It's actually downloaded from an IBM.com site. So it is, you know, despite not being provided through Fix Central or the ESS website or something like that, it is an official IBM delivery. Now, there is the ability for you to create other repositories or use repositories from third parties, and there actually are a couple third-party repositories available now, and we're it's the same type of scenario we've been seeing with Linux distributions for years, where there's an official distribution from Red Hat or whoever is the main entity behind your Linux distribution, and then you have these repositories from other people that are also publishing software, right? So right now I know of two community-hosted repositories that have really cool technologies in them, and if you'd like, you can actually add those repositories so that this package management utility and the underlying Yum technology knows about the software that's in there, can install software from there, do updates from there, and so on.
So let's go on, look at the web page here. This is kind of the go-to starting place. It does talk about repositories down here. Why don't we go add one here quick? So there's a third-party one here. It gives you some information. Now, if you're not familiar with this, this is somewhat confusing as to what to do to get it to work. But the short of it is you can create a file called this, put this in it, and you're good to go. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go over here, and we'll just do a work link. Yep, let's go into Q shell. Most of my stuff has been around that. Why don't I copy and paste that instead? So we're going to go browse into that directory. Okay, so you got the one repository, ibm.repo, and that's what we saw in the GUI, basically. So we're going to add a new one. Of course, I have it there. And we're going to call it, let's do the IBM eye doctor. Okay. Let's just go edit that file, and we're just going to copy and paste that contents into that file. Okay, let's go back to our GUI and reload that. So if we look at available packages, we should see right there, the IBM eye doctor. Now, I didn't have to do a whole lot of work for that to show up. And if I hit install here, I just want to show a little something. Traditionally, you'd go to your GoLick PGM and install one, put the PTFs on, that kind of stuff. If we go look, nothing shows up here. You're not going to see anything around that utility you had me install or around this one. I don't remember which one this is. Links. Oh, that's a cool little web browser for the 400. You can go crawl some websites. Yeah, you can get your update on your news in the morning on the green screen version. How about that? But you won't see that on this screen. So, if you have a lot of people in your environment that have authority to do this, you might not even know this is on your system. So, I don't know if we want to talk about how to secure it down right now. Actually, before that, these packages that show up on this list, you touched on this a minute ago. These used to be, not all these, but some of them used to be available by AIX binaries or the old Perl website. That's not what these are, right? These are IBM I specific. And who creates these things? What are these?
Correct, and that's a great differentiation point. There is a large portion of our community that has that history of doing, like you say, loading on AIX packages, and they could have gotten those from several sites. You mentioned Perl. There was an IBM site called the AIX Toolbox for Linux applications. There was another site called Bull Freeware that does a lot of AIX work as well. And so people have been loading those on for a while. Some of those packages, if you go through the work of getting them installed on IBMI. First off, it takes a good bit of wizardry to get them installed correctly. And then some of them actually worked really well. Some of them worked kind of okay, and some of them didn't work at all, right? And that's because those were AIX applications built for AIX. And what we have now is IBM packages built by IBM for IBMI, and the whole ecosystem around the install and everything is also built for and around IBMI. And so what we get is a much seamless and reliable user experience because it's built for IBMI, it'll reliably work, right? And it's good to differentiate that because a number of people know, I talked to a customer a few weeks ago and I was telling them about rsync available, and they said, oh yeah, we knew about rsync. You've had it for a while. We couldn't get it installed right. And I had to explain, no, this is different. rsync is one of the many packages in this list. And again, like Ryan said, Google is your friend for some of these. I have a whole 60-minute presentation I've done on stuff you can do with rsync, but it's built for IBMI. So, it's, like I said, the user experience is just a lot better. If you click install, it'll install. If you go run it, it'll just work well. And Ryan's actually demoing a button that a lot of people haven't even realized in the UI, which is you can select a package and click info, and you get at least a basic amount of information on what the package is here. So it's, what is rsync? It's an open source utility to do file transfer type stuff. Very, very powerful. And you could go to the website that's listed there. You could Google it, and you could find a lot more info from there as well, of course.
Yeah, it's a nice feature they put in there in that tool. I like it. Now, I'm kind of more of a command line guy, Jesse. So if I want to install or check the history of what's been installed, I mentioned you won't see anything on this screen, but if you go into QShell, the Yum utility does have a couple of switches or commands you can give it that'll tell you what's installed, when it was installed, even let you remove it as well. And that command is called history. So if you do Yum, spell it right, without the coffee. All right. Normally this is where I would cut and redo things, but we're well into this, so we're just going to, oh, you know what? It's not that I can't spell, although I can, as demonstrated above. I don't have my environment variable set up. So, like I mentioned earlier, there's there's a couple of things you need to set up before this is fully usable and functional. So let's talk about environment variables and path. What is my path? Well, let's take a look. In QShell, I can do an echo $path, and it'll tell me. Notice I don't see qopenSys/exe in here at all. So therefore, it can't find the yum command. There's a couple of ways to add this to your environment, and most of those are outlined here on the site. I go back. Let's see, where is it here? I know it's in here somewhere.
Up a little bit.
Did I miss it?
No.
Oh,
right there, very top of your screen now. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to echo whatever my path is currently set to and append this to it. We just won't do it to my dot profile right now. We'll just do it. We'll do it live. I think I need to export path too, right? Yeah.
If you actually want to take out the echo from your previous command, say path equals.
Good
part.
point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just proof that we didn't get together to rehearse this a whole lot. Yeah, all things that someone might run into, though. Okay, so now if I do a yum history, oh, look at that, it works. You can see we installed both of those. Now there's some cool stuff you can do here. If you just want to do a weekly or monthly audit or whatever, that's one way of doing it. Notice it doesn't tell you who installed anything, but it does give you a date and time, and that should help.
Yep, and actually, Ryan, if you say yum history info and put a number after it, so let's say you're more curious about what happened with that links install, you can say yum history info 2, and it'll actually tell you. You have an older version, but it'll actually tell you who installed it. So you see user QSecOffer, you see times, you see, pretty much anything that you'd want to know. It'll tell you if you go down which repository it installed from and everything you need to know. And all those warnings that you see, that was actually warnings from the RPM install itself. So this is a community provided one, and we're going to have those warnings fixed up soon in Lynx's case, actually. But yeah, that's any errors or warnings from that package that were installed, that's all retained, right? So if you didn't happen to see it when you ran the command or something and didn't notice it, that's all still there in the history.
I like it. That's a nice pro tip right there. I didn't catch that one. I haven't used Yum a whole lot. More familiar with some of the other ones like apt. But one thing I did find kind of fun about this is if you want to go ahead and remove a package, there's an undo command, and you can actually undo and undo, which is kind of fun. So if I want to remove that links, we do yum history undo. See if you're sure you want to remove it. It does it. And now if I go look at the history again, you can see it does add an entry of the undo there. And if you want to get real fun, you can undo the undo, and it puts it back on, right? Because, I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? I don't know.
It's fun.
It is kind of fun, yeah. And I've only tested it to like 6 or 8 versions of that, so I don't know how long that'll I assume that would just work indefinitely, but I don't know why you would ever do that. Yeah. Now, besides manually setting my path variable in the shell, there are other ways to do it on the system, so a user wouldn't have to go do that themselves. You can still do the old work, env vir, for your job or the system and set it in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at that here quick. I've got a command already. Since I've proven I can't type very efficiently today, you could put this in here, and then what? Just log off and log back in, and you're good to go. Let's see. There we go. That last time I typed that path setup in there, that's only good for my job until I log off again. Or probably just my shell, actually. If I close QShell with an F3 and went back in, I probably need to reset that up again. But there's some other ways you can set that as well. There's a .profile script. I'll let the audience refer to the website on how to do that or what your preferred method is for that. One thing cool, we do have a couple other questions I'd like to get through here.
Sure.
Let's see. These. How has the customer adoption been of this product? Are people getting into it? Is there a particular customer segment that has adopted it more than others?
Yeah, that's great question. The adoption rates have been, quite honestly, larger than expected. I mean, obviously, we host this on an IBM.com site. We get to see the download numbers. It's been surprising us how many people are downloading this stuff, how many people are doing the installations of this stuff. Based on, our best analysis, that we had some really quick early adopters, which are primarily those people who have been doing open source on the platform for, many, many years. Now they're excited to be able to get it and install it and manage it so easily, right? Because prior to these technologies, it was quite difficult. And so we weren't surprised to see kind of this initial burst of people downloading and using it. But, you know, we've been GA since May, so, you know, about 6 months or so now. And, you know, we've been surprised to see those download numbers continue to go. So we still have hundreds of new installs every month, and, you know, the adoption rate has been really good. And also the feedback that we've been getting is much better than we anticipated, right? Like you mentioned earlier, people tend to be very familiar with Go Lick Pick'em. They're very familiar with these management tools that they've had in their tool belt for years. And here we are coming along with this open source stuff that's entirely different. And you know, we expected a lot more people to be dissatisfied with what we're providing, but actually people tend to be pretty happy, and we've been getting largely positive feedback about things.
Oh, great. I got another question for you here. If I'm a traditional Linux background type guy, and I'm used to some of the commands that are available to me, or some of their switches or parameters, you'll notice some of the commands we have on IBM I don't line up with what's on Linux. And one simple example of that is the date command. If I want to do some programming or scripting and calculate a date in the past, on Linux, the date command has this -d switch, and it lets you put in like -5 days, or 7 if you want to find last week. And it works pretty well. You know, it'll come up and tell you what the date was a few days ago. But if I jump back over to my IBM I and go into Q shell, I mean, I do have a date command, but there is no -d switch. So you get this kind of error that says, you know, not going to work for you. Are there ways to submit requests to IBM to say, hey, you know, can you make this command function more like it does over on this OS or something like that?
Yeah, there most definitely is. At the risk of making this webinar longer than you had anticipated, I'd like to walk you through some steps to try first, though.
Yeah.
So I want you to type yum space provides. And then, of course, as you know, everything that we ship is in this qopenSys packages bin directory. So just go ahead and put /qopenSys/packages/bin. And that's PKGS. Sorry.
Was there an exe in there?
Yeah. So qopenSys/pkgs/bin.
Oh boy, I tell you what, I'm just going to cut and paste it from
yeah, that works.
Over here. This was totally not planned. This is off the cuff here. So which one are we going to? Bin?
Bin, yep.
All right.
And then at the end of that, put /date. And what you're basically doing when you're running this command is you say, okay, well, I know that all of this RPM stuff ships in this qopenSys packages bin directory. I'm curious if Jesse's team has shipped the GNU version of the date utility. Because the differences that you're pointing out are really the differences between the GNU version, which is what all of the major Linux distributions are going to have, and the version that's shipped with paste that you already ran, right? And so one of the features of yum that not a lot of people know about is you can say yum provides, and you can actually put splats and wildcards in here as well. But you can say, what package provides this guy? And if there were no package, it would say something like, you know, no results found. But you'll actually see here, it says, oh, hey, there is this core utils-GNU package that provides qopenSys packages bin date. So if you were to do a yum install of core utils-GNU, I think that's right up, yeah. And it's actually to the left of the colon before the version, so it's just core utils-GNU,
oh, right there. Yeah.
Lowercase, right there. I mean, you want the -GNU as part of the package name, -GNU. If you did a yum install of that guy, hit enter, he's going to, of course, not take super long, 27 megs, so he'll take a few minutes. when he's done, you'll actually have the date command that you want to run.
That is fantastic.
He's already downloaded, he's installing, and then boom, you already have, without knowing it, what you're looking for. And that's actually the reason I wanted to bring that up and make your webinar longer than you wanted to, is because a lot of people ask for stuff that they don't realize that they already have. Right? So you'll need to sign back out and back in again to get the path updated in there. But you'll now have that. If you say which date, I'll actually queue up this. And this one I don't think you set up your path, but you're going to have a queue up sys packages bin date, and that is the same exact GNU-based date utility that you have, right, on Linux. Right, so it'll be actually the same code that's running on SUSE, the same code that's running on Ubuntu, since I see that's where your other virtual machines there are.
Yeah.
Right? And so there you go. You have him. You can go run him, and he'll do exactly what you want him to do. If you have your path set up appropriately, which you demoed earlier, then it'll just work from any scripts that you write.
That is awesome.
So, but your question was really, how do I go request stuff? And I like to tell people the process is, buy me a beer or something, but we really point people out to the IBM RFE website, and there's an open source /PACE category out there, so you can go out. If you're not familiar with RFE, just be aware you don't need to be a business partner or an advisory council member or someone under some kind of confidentiality agreement. Anybody can go out and submit an RFE for pretty much anything. And if you just go submit an RFE to that open source category and say, hey, I'm looking for this solution to be available, then the team here will take it into consideration.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the RFE is nothing new to us. We've all kind of known about it in existence. So hopefully people are familiar with that. But this option here to search and query provides is a great example of, hey, I've used something over here, I really love it, why doesn't it work here? Well, maybe it does already and you're just not using it.
Yeah.
That's great. We are running a little short on time. You got another couple minutes if we go over just a few?
Yep, I absolutely do, and it's my fault we're running over.
Yeah, well, that's what you get. Next time we'll have to get together over a beer and shorten it up a little. So how does IBMI determine what technologies to focus on next?
So primarily, up till now, we've primarily focused on what Stack Overflow and their market research calls correlated technologies, which means, we really want to build up these ecosystems around all of the new languages and technologies that we're bringing, right? So for instance, back, 10 plus years ago now, when we brought PHP onto the system, almost every PHP application was writing to MySQL, so we had to bring a MySQL solution on as well, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we've been doing with Python, with Node.js, is building out these ecosystems, building out these correlated technologies so that not only do you have a Python runtime, you can do all the stuff with Python that most real-life applications are going to be wanting to do with it, right? And so we've been working a lot just on that ecosystem. But now we're really shifting gears to, again, these real business applications, right? So we're looking at what's the business case, what's the use case, what real solutions can we enable on IBMI with open source technologies, and that's where I think we're going to see the most value moving forward.
Nice. One thing I wanted to mention about this which command here, I didn't really explain what I was doing. Think of your path as your library list. And when you enter a which command, it searches whatever's on your library list for the command, or the first one that it would hit. So you could see here when I did which date, it was telling me it was using the one in QOpenSys user bin, not the one I wanted. It had just downloaded in packages. So I basically modified my library list and told it to use this command. So that's a good way to check, which command you're using. The command is called which. Cool. Oh, so what's next? I mean, what's up and coming? Where is this going to go?
So what's up and coming? First off, I want to say, the biggest problem that people have had with the ACS UI that you demoed today is actually FTP access, So right now, that repository that's on an IBM.com site, you access it with FTP. ACS is all written around that as well, and we actually had a surprising amount of users whose PC couldn't connect to an FTP site. And, we actually have HTTP and HTTPS now, so we're going to be rolling that change out to the ACS tooling. We have a lot of utilities in Yum that we're going to be shipping to do things like adding a repository that you demoed. We're going to be making that easier. The ACS product as well is going to have more features to set up your path, set up your environment as well. So, you demoed setting up that path environment variable specifically. I'm hoping we have options in there to kind of do all of that for you. So if you're not familiar with the open source realm, you'll just have some nice, good, easy interfaces to do so. In terms of actual technology that's delivered, the big thing that we're working on right now is actually an ODBC driver for IBM I, so that any open source package that knows ODBC can talk to the local database using ODBC. So for instance, the Node ODBC package, Python has a PyODBC package. Future languages as well that have ODBC bindings or adapters, they can all just work much more easily. So we're working on that. We have numerous Node.js frameworks and things that we've been working on. Expect to see some cool updates in the Node.js realm in the next few weeks. And, some of it I have to say, stay tuned. We are working on a couple more language runtimes right now and some other big things. So I just want to say stay tuned and, keep following whatever channels you're following, whether it's the LinkedIn channel or my Twitter or my blog or whatever you're following, keep following those and stay tuned for what's coming.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. And there's a couple things I didn't get to touch on. I'll probably make future videos about those, such as migrating off of OPS over to this and things like that. But thank you so much for all your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Ryan, and thanks everybody for listening.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.